Hi, welcome to Chapter 3. In this chapter, we discuss non-associative learning, or the type of learning that takes place after repeated exposure to a single type or class of stimulus. The two primary types of non-associative learning are habituation and sensitization. We'll discuss perceptual and spatial learning in the next video. Habituation is a decrease in the intensity of a response following repeated exposure to a stimulus. Sensitization is an increase in response intensity after stimulus exposure. So we have two seemingly opposing processes, but we'll discuss the similarities they share. Both serve very important functions. Habituation allows the organism to filter out and ignore irrelevant, non-threatening stimuli. This allows us to devote our limited cognitive resources to the processing of important, goal-relevant information. Imagine if you were unable to focus on this video because you were completely distracted by the soft humming of the ceiling fan or the sounds of traffic outside your window. Initially, organisms exposed to a novel stimulus will display an orienting or startle reflex. If you hear a loud noise outside your window, you may turn or orient yourself toward the direction of the noise. If there is a loud alarm, you may have a startle reflex. You jump and your muscles tense. But if the alarm was repeated over and over again, we would see these responses dissipate. I always think of car alarms as a real-life example. When they were first introduced, many would jump and look when they heard them. Now people are completely unfazed. No one even bothers to notice a car alarm. We absolutely need the ability to ignore innocuous stimuli, but there can be a downside. Habituation can even be dangerous. There are lots of examples of this, but my favorite is the case of attack squirrels. The diet of squirrels is almost exclusively vegetation, but they are technically omnivores and will eat meat on occasion. Usually they do so when it is readily accessible or when they are desperate. Squirrels are hardly ferocious predators, but biologists have documented a unique hunting technique used by squirrels. They've observed squirrels fake attacking birds. Squirrels will stalk and lunge at birds in an overly dramatic play acting style, almost as if they are just pretend hunting. At first, the birds will fly away easily, but then after a while, they notice that the squirrels are nowhere near close to actually pouncing on them, and they just ignore the silly squirrels altogether. But when the squirrel is desperate and has no other means of acquiring food, the squirrel will pounce for real when the bird least expects it. Squirrels use habituation to lull their prey into a false sense of security. With sensitization, we see an increase in the intensity of a response after exposure to a stimulus. Strong, threatening, noxious, or aversive stimuli may produce sensitization. We are in a heightened state of arousal and responses are intensified. Think about the last time you watched a scary movie. Were you more aware of the subtle noises in your house? Maybe you had a startle reflex when you heard the tree branch against the window. Sensitization is more easily generalizable. The sensitizing stimulus, the scary movie, the loud noise, may produce a heightened response to a variety of other stimuli. Subtle noises, sudden movement. Further, sensitization may require fewer repetitions to produce an effect. Both of these characteristics are incredibly important. You don't need to burn your hand repeatedly on different types of stoves to learn to be on high alert around hot surfaces. We see the similarities and differences between habituation and sensitization when we examine the underlying neural processes. In habituation, we see a process of synaptic depression. With repeated exposure to the stimulus, there's a decrease in the communication between the neurons. Here, the relevant sensory and motor neurons. With short-term habituation, there is a decrease in the amount of neurotransmitter released by the sensory presynaptic neuron. With long-term habituation, there could be structural changes to the synapse, a decrease in the number of synapses between the neurons, or a decrease in receptor site from the motor neuron. Habituation is homosynaptic, meaning that these changes involve only the synapses that are affected during the experience of the stimulus. Sensitization, on the other hand, is heterosynaptic, meaning that it can involve changes across multiple synapses, even those that weren't activated by the experience of the stimulus. It does this through the functions of interneurons. An interneuron is the middleman between the sensory and motor neurons here. It can act as an intermediary and modulates the activity of multiple neurons. In the process of sensitization, these interneurons act to increase the sensitivity of multiple sensory neurons, increasing the communication between these sensory neurons and the connected motor neurons. All right, thanks, and we'll talk about perceptual learning and spatial learning and memory in the next video.